So let me ask first, can folks hear me? I've got a few different microphones going on. So, all right, I'm seeing thumbs up in the back of the room, so that's fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. Again, I'm Laura Watson. I'm the director of the Department of Ecology. And yes, you have all kinds of folks here, a lot of folks from business, and you have the regulators of business here. So I'm very grateful to be invited here to talk with all of you. It's not working? No. There, okay. Are we good now? Please use the lecture. Use this one? Please use the podium, yes. Okay, I'm going to use the podium mics. Hopefully we won't get any feedback. So just a little bit about myself. Governor Jay Inslee, I understand he was here yesterday afternoon. He appointed me to my position just a little over 4 years ago, so January of 2020. So I got to start right before COVID. That was exciting. But honestly, not just because of COVID. I will have to say the last few years at the agency have been some of the most exciting years in our agency's history. It has been a time of rapid change for us, for the state. It's been a time of great progress, and it's progress that, of course, would not have been possible without our ability to partner with our many international partners and business partners to collaborate and learn from all of you. And I will say that I have had the honor, since I've been in my position, of getting to oversee and implement some of the most important environmental policies in our state's history. Washington State right now is making truly historic strides to reduce carbon pollution and to address climate change. And the way that we're doing it is by building a clean energy economy based on market-based tools and market-based incentives. What we're not doing is relying on sort of one-size-fits-all top-down regulations, right? So when you think about air quality regulations to regulate air emissions, oftentimes they're kind of those command and control types of regulations where we set a regulation, it applies at the pipe, the same rules apply to everybody. That's not what we're doing with greenhouse gas emissions here in Washington State. What we're doing is we are implementing policies that give businesses the flexibility and incentives so that businesses can come up with the most efficient and cost-effective and profitable solutions to allow the transformation to clean energy to take place. All of this while we are reducing waste and promoting sustainable economic development. And already today in Washington, we are seeing the fruits of those efforts. I know that this conference has touched on a lot of those examples already. For example, developing the hydrogen hub here in Washington State, expanding innovation in carbon-free energy, and I think coming up just a little bit later this afternoon, sustainable aviation fuels, one of my personal favorites. It is definitely a subject of keen interest here in Washington State and for the future of our region's economy, and obviously also a very critical emission source for us to be able to address in our global decarbonization efforts, right? That's a difficult to decarbonize sector. And there's so much that we can learn as we continue down this path. So I had the great privilege of visiting Denmark about 18 months ago as part of a delegation. And it was a great experience for me. I know there seems some people in the audience that were part of my delegation. I got to see firsthand and learn how government and businesses can work together to support renewable natural gas and bioenergy. And it was very inspiring for me to see firsthand what is possible when economic and environmental and policy interests work together towards that common goal. Now here in Washington, we have many of the same tools and incentives in place. And in fact, I have heard recently some proposals for this state that would feel right at home in Denmark. And so that is pretty cool. I will also say, on a personal note, I had the pleasure of getting to visit Iceland for a family vacation last summer. So I was beyond excited to see the recent news about the mammoth direct air capture and storage facility. And I will say too, we had such a good time in Iceland, and now I have an excuse to go back. I have to go back. I have to see the facility in action. But definitely it's going to take these kinds of big ideas and bold business leadership if we are going to succeed. And we have to succeed in tackling the climate crisis. And while private business, no doubt, plays the key role in driving the innovations that we're seeing today, I feel that it would be remiss for me not to mention how we are using money that we're generating through our state's Climate Commitment Act to accelerate developments. And I understand the governor spoke about the Climate Commitment Act yesterday. You're going to have to hear a little bit about it from me again today because my agency's implementing it. We're very, very proud. That's, of course, our Cap and Invest program here in Washington State. Now, to date, with just a year of auctions under our belts, we've raised close to $2 billion through our Cap and Invest program, and a large portion of that funding has gone to support renewable energy infrastructure and innovation. So I'll highlight just a few examples. $15 million to clean energy research and development at the University of Washington and Washington State University. $33 million to zero emission electric transit buses. $39 million to large scale solar projects. And $30 million to on-farm emission reductions and anaerobic digesters. Digesters is what I meant to say. Now, the funding is, in some cases, we're able to do double duty with the funding because, of course, we also have the funding through the Inflation Reduction Act at the federal level. So we're able to leverage those state dollars and then obtain additional federal support. And then together, those state and federal efforts are helping to supercharge and fund our progress toward the clean energy economy. And funding, of course, here is a very, very big deal because when we're innovating, when we're the first ones out of the gate, right, a lot of the projects are pretty expensive. So, right, funding's important. But I also want to touch on the other side of the equation. By putting a price on carbon, we're also putting a premium on clean energy innovation. And as a result, we're attracting companies and investments and visionaries to our state. For example, Kaiser Aluminum in Spokane is leveraging state investments and will be able to cut its emissions by 13,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide a year, which is great. That is, again, another hard to decarbonize sector. BP's Cherry Point Refinery, which is the largest refinery in our state, they have invested millions of dollars to improve their efficiency, to increase renewable diesel production, and, of course, reduce its emissions. That's what it's all about. So really, by creating these incentives, we are allowing the market to work. And it is working. I'd say another great example from the Climate Commitment Act comes through our carbon offset program, where just recently we had two separate companies seek and get approval to get those decades-old stocks of chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, a little bit less of a mouthful, CFCs, to find those old stocks and to destroy them. And you probably all recall CFCs were those kind of nasty old refrigeration chemicals that were threatening to destroy the ozone layer back in the 1980s. So we've stopped using them, but we've got big stockpiles of them. So these projects are going to prevent these chemicals from escaping into the air, and they're also going to help industries comply with the Climate Commitment Act with a cost-effective way to obtain these offset credits. So it's the flexibility and the aligning of interests in these market-based solutions, which is what the legislature intended when it passed the Climate Commitment Act. And I warned you I was going to talk about it. I know I've mentioned it many times so far, the Climate Commitment Act, or the CCA, as we call it. But I do want to say it's important to point out that the CCA in Washington State, as important as it is, it's only one of Washington's broad suite of climate policies. The CCA is important because it's economy-wide, it touches most sectors, but it works alongside a number of other policies that are sector-specific carbon reduction policies. And those policies include our state's Clean Fuel Standard, the Zero Emission Vehicle Standard, the Clean Energy Transformation Act, phasing out of hydrofluorocarbons, standards to increase building energy efficiency, and programs to help homeowners reduce their energy usage and therefore also reduce their energy bills. These programs are all working in harmony with one another, and what we see is that progress in one area then reduces the regulatory and economic requirements of the other complementary policies. And this puts Washington at the forefront of the carbon energy economy nationally, and it also situates us well, we think, to be able to further collaborate with our many international and business partners. But I think despite all the progress we're making, the biggest impact that we can make really goes beyond any single policy or any single investment or set of investments. I believe the greatest good that we can do as government officials and as business leaders, as members of our communities, and let's face it, as co-residents of planet Earth, I think the biggest, most important thing we can do is set an example for others to follow by doing good work, continuing to do good work together. And we're very proud that we'll be able to do that, again, through our Cap and Invest program, through our efforts to link with the larger joint market of California and Quebec. In March of this year, Governor Inslee and I met with leaders of California and Quebec, and we were able to announce and affirm our mutual interest in reaching an agreement to link our carbon markets. And of course, the Nordic countries are very familiar with the power that comes from a multi-jurisdictional carbon cap. The European Union's emissions trading system has been driving these kinds of innovations for nearly 20 years. And I can say that we really benefited, we were able to learn by observing what you all are doing on the other side of the ocean, to learn and to see ways in which we can innovate and see ways in which we can borrow from what's been done there. And we are hoping to be able to add to that experience. If we can forge a successful partnership with California and Quebec, we can demonstrate how states and provinces and other subnational governments can work together to drive regional and global policy changes. If we succeed here in Washington, there are states across the country that will follow our lead. In fact, we're already seeing that, with New York having announced their Cap and Invest program and in the process to finalize that program, and seeing interest from other states like Maryland and New Jersey. The success of the Cap and Invest program here in Washington will demonstrate, we believe, that a market-based approach can work pretty much anywhere. It sends a clear signal to businesses and industries that the future will be built in a clean economy, where innovation and new decarbonizing technologies are going to thrive. So again, thank you so much for inviting me to be here with all of you today and get to learn a little bit about what you all do. And also just, thank you personally for all that you're doing to power us towards a clean energy future.
Okay.